In the preceding lesson's Intro to Data Science section, we began talking a little bit about basic descriptive statistics, and I mentioned the concept of getting to know your data. So a lot of the basic descriptive statistics are for that particular purpose, and another way to kind of get to know the data that you're working with is with measures of central tendency, specifically the mean, the median, and the mode. A measure of central tendency is some sort of individual value representing a central value in your set of values, some way to think about the center point or something that's in some way typical of the values in your data set. And as we work through these videos, you're going to work with much larger data sets, and you'll want to kind of explore the data and get a sense of the data before you actually work with it. So we'll start talking about that in some of the later videos. Now, the three measures of central tendency that we're going to take a look at in this video are the mean, which is simply the average of a set of values, the median, which is the middle value in a set of values when you've already arranged those values into ascending order, and then finally we're going to talk about the mode, and the mode is simply the most frequently occurring value. Now, there are some problems with the mode in that it could be that you have exactly the same number of each value, in which case there is no mode, or you could have multiple values that have the most frequently occurring number of instances, and in those cases the libraries that you use to calculate the mode will often simply give you an exception at execution time. So let me switch over to my terminal window here, and let's start up a new IPython session. And for the purpose of this mean, median, and mode discussion, let's go ahead and create a list of grades. And as you saw earlier in this lesson, a list is simply a square bracket delimited set of values. For this purpose, we're going to use the 5 values 85, 93, 45, 89, and 85. So we've got a 5-element list. Now you'll notice, by the way, that one of those 5 values is duplicated. 85 appears twice in the list. So we've got this grades array, and before we get into predefined libraries that enable you to do things like mean, median, and mode, let's go ahead and do the mean on our own using some built-in functions that are part of Python itself. So I think I mentioned this earlier in this lesson. There's a sum function that can be used to total up the values in a sequence of values, and there's also a function that helps you determine the length of a sequence. And if I know the total number of grades and I know the total of those grades, I can use those values to calculate the average grade, which is the mean grade. So let's do that. We're going to use the sum function, and the sum function is interesting because you can simply hand it an entire list of values no matter how many elements are in it, and it will give you back the total of the items in that list. And I want to divide that by the number of elements in the list, and it turns out that there is a len for length function built into Python that can give you the total number of elements in the sequence you pass it as an argument. So in this case, the sequence is the grades list that we defined up above. So sum is going to calculate the total of these 5 values, and this is why I have not been declaring variables named sum all along. I've been calling them total. And then separately, the len function will look at the list called grades, and every list knows how many elements it has, and the len function simply accesses that piece of data and gives it back. So len with grades as an argument is going to simply give me the value 5. And when I press enter, we can see that the mean grade, or the average grade based on the numbers up above, is 79.4. Now, this is actually a demonstration of a little bit of functional style programming in Python. These two functions are examples of reductions. They look at a collection of values and give you back a single value that represents that collection in some way. In the first case, sum gives you the total of the items in the collection, and in the second case, len just gives you the number of items, the count, if you will, of items in the collection. And count was one of the descriptive statistics that we mentioned in the previous lesson's Intro to Data Science section. So len is basically the count statistic. Now, of course, the one thing that's nice about using these predefined functions is we don't have to define our own looping structure here, and by not defining our own looping structure, we're avoiding the common errors associated with looping, where we might do something wrong in terms of how we implement the loop in the first place. Here we're using what's known as internal iteration. The sum function already knows how to walk its way through a sequence of numbers and calculate their total. We don't have to say how to do that. We just have to tell the function what we want. We want the total of all those grades, and it gives us back a result. So a lot of functional style programming in Python is done by delegating to functions built into the language and delegating to functions or methods that are part of the standard library. Now, along those lines, I want to introduce the statistics library, which is one of many Python standard library modules that's available to you in your Python installation, and you can access its capabilities simply by importing the statistics module. Now, previously, when I did an import, I used the from module name import piece of the module format, so from import. Here I'm simply saying import the entire statistics module. Now when you do that, in order to access its contents, you must use the name of the module followed by a dot and then the name of whatever you want to use within that module. And it turns out this module, among its capabilities, has functions named mean, median, and mode that we can use to produce the descriptive statistics we talked about at the beginning of this video. So if I go ahead and start to type statistics and I hit tab, you can see there's a couple of things that start with STATI, so I'm going to select statistics, and then I'm going to type a dot, and just to show you that there's a bunch of stuff defined in the statistics module, watch what happens when I press the tab key here. It starts displaying a big list of all of the different things that are part of the statistics module, and among them you can see here mean, median, and mode, and a lot of other things as well, some of which we'll discuss in later examples. So let's say we want to use the mean function, and again, like the sum function and the len function up above, mean knows how to walk its way through a collection of items. You simply have to tell it what you want to calculate the average of, in this case the list of grades, and when you execute it, it will go ahead and figure out not only how to total up those grades, but how many grades there were and produce the correct average or mean of those grades in this case. Let's go ahead and recall that, and we'll change this to median. Now you may recall that the median depends on the grades being in sorted order to figure out the middle element. Well, if you look at the grades up above here, they are not in sorted order. So the median function takes care of that for you. Then it goes and figures out the middle element, which in our case, because we have 5 elements, will be whatever appears as the middle position. It's an odd number of elements, so we'll always have one middle. If there were an even number of elements, the 2 middle elements would be averaged by default. So let's go ahead and get the median, and here we can see that the median is 85. So if we were to reorder these, we'd have 45, 85, 85, 89, and 93. So the second of the 85 values would be in the middle position, and that's why we got a median of 85. And similarly, let's go ahead and do the mode. And you can see in this case, excuse me, that the mode also is 85 because there are two 85s and only one each of the other three values in our original list. So those are the basic descriptive statistics: mean, median, and mode. And by the way, as long as we talked about the fact that the median function is sorting the data for you, there is actually, as you might expect in Python, a way to sort the data built into the language via the function called sorted. So let's go ahead and try that. We'll do sorted with grades as an argument, and what this is going to do, it won't modify the grades list. What it will do is make a copy of the list but give it back to us in sorted ascending order. So you can see this is the set of values sorted, and by the way, now we can easily see what the median is, which is the middle element in the sorted set of lists of the sorted set of values, excuse me. Oh, and by the way, just one last thing before I forget, if you go and evaluate grades, you can see that the original list was left unchanged by the use of sorted back in snippet 7.